Bismillah, alhamdulillah, salatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. One of the universal qualities of Islam that every single person who looks at Islam from the inside or from the outside finds beautiful is the type of brotherhood that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has allowed the hearts of believers to have. Look, for example, at any person who accepts Islam. If you know someone yourself right now, your friend, your uncle, someone within your family, someone outside of your family, at your work, etc., who's accepted Islam, ask them, what was one of the things that attracted you to Islam? I would dare say that many people would say, many of those people who accepted Islam will say that one of the things that attracted me to Islam and one of the things that took me and brought me closer to Islam was the fact that I saw people who call themselves Muslims treating each other like brothers and sisters. And the reason for that is because within the entire system of Islam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed something called loving for the sake of Allah. So loving for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a quality that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wishes every single one of us to have. And that's why the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he told us in a hadith, he said that three things, if they happen to be within a person, then he will taste the sweetness of faith. One of those three things that the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned was that a person loves someone and he doesn't love them except for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when you have this feeling of love for your brother for no other reason except for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that is the point at which you will start to find and taste the sweetness of faith. I ask Allah Rabbul Izzati wal Jalal to allow us to taste the sweetness of faith. My dear brothers, my dear sisters, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made the relationship that believers have among themselves so strong that in the Quran, Allah refers to this relationship in a rhetorically powerful way, such that it appears to be even stronger than blood ties. Let me explain how. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ إِخْوَةٌ. Believers happen to be but brothers. Now, that's a concept that all of us know. We grew up on it as well. But the question is, the word choice of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of the Quran. Why does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say what He says the way He says? That's a question we have to ask ourselves every single time we read any verse of the Quran. And this one is one of those verses. Allah says, إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ إِخْوَةٌ. Verily, all believers happen to be brothers. Now, the word akh in Arabic, it means a brother. And there are a number of ways within the Arabic language, at least three ways, in which you can pluralize, by which you can pluralize the word akh. So you can say akh, and you can make it plural into ikhwan, and you can also have it pluralized into ikhwa. And those are the two famous ones, but there's a third one as well. So, out of those two famous ones, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ إِخْوَةٌ. Believers are but brothers, but the type of ukhuwa, the type of brotherhood, that is that of ikhwa. Now, the scholars of Arabic linguistics, they explained that when the early Arabs would use the term ikhwan, that would be a type of brotherhood that is there within society and people at large. You see, all of us are brothers at the end of the day because we're all children of Adam. And that's why in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala even refers to the prophets that were sent to their nations as brothers in some instances within the Quran. So all of us are brothers, whether we're Muslims or non-Muslims. But then there's a more particular brotherhood, and that is the type of brotherhood that's between people who happen to be from the same mother and the same parents. Now, normally the Arabs, when they're referring to the type of brotherhood which means family ties and familial ties, they use the term ikhwa, and they don't use the term ikhwan. But for the sake of proving to people, and for the sake of guiding the reader, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses the word in the Quran which refers to familial ties, but He makes a reference to spiritual tie. He makes a reference to the religious tie, and that is belief. إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ. Indeed, believers happen to be brothers, And that brotherhood happens to be the same type of brotherhood that a brother has towards his brother from the same mother. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to have this sort of brotherhood and have this sort of love for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so that we're able to taste the sweetness of faith. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين.